Welcome everyone to Canadian Yorker. Welcome to part two of our discussion regarding um, the topic of of Black history being basically removed from America and talking about the interesting dynamics going on in the United States regarding um, I'm just gonna say it. It's this whitewashing of of history that's happening in America, um, where we're only being told what we need to hear. We have to hear, not what we need to hear, to say in the least. Um, there's a lot of things that are left unspoken, and a lot of things that are put out there. Just enough information is given out for everybody to know, and not the entire whole truth is being told. So, in this article, in today's discussion, just continuing our discussion, I talked about Sergeant Henry Johnson. So, the United States government um, with the current presidency would like to erase Sergeant Henry Johnson's story. And Sergeant Henry Johnson is a war hero he's a war hero from World War One. He helped defend um, his platoon against a German attack and fought off many attackers, sustained 21 injuries to his body. He received the Purple Heart, he received the Medal of Honor, he even received France's highest reward from the country of France um, in World War One. And that was during the time of segregation and um, basically segregation in the United States, where you had the black code and segregation in the United States. A very, very um, it's part of that century of America where so many amazing things are going on, so many inventions are being made. Electricity is discovered, light bulbs are made. The telephone comes around about that time, around 100 years of American history. Like so many amazing things are happening, but at the same time, at that point in time in American history, we have the history of segregation and black codes that were in America at that time in history 100 years ago. Literally, we are in the 2020s, so about 100 years ago, around this time, we're in 2026. 100 years ago, it was 1926. You can imagine how different the context of the times that we're in. It was just a different time. Black Americans are treated as second class citizens, and even if someone is not Black American, they are still treated as second class citizens in the United States. Um, Black Americans have the ability to vote, but they are restricted, extremely restricted from being able to vote in the United States. Um, I know I'm talking a lot about that, but basically that's just a backdrop of that's the time period that Henry Johnson is living in, and despite those obstacles that are in Henry Johnson's way, he manages to distinguish himself as an amazing soldier for this country, and and he gains the highest rewards that any person can get for military service, and that's just what happens. And in the past three articles of what I've read in the part one video, it was quite eye opening um, to anyone out there. Uh, like I said in the previous video, that many people in the past suffered so much to build the future for us in the present, and they want to see the next generation succeed. and there's been many successes for the next generation. Um, Excuse me, I'm sorry. Um, so in this next article here, I'm just gonna kind of go into what happened with the this current administration. We're gonna just kind of go over a couple of things. So this article is from the whitehouse.gov website, which was just this last year, March 25th, March 27th, 2025. Of course, everyone knows about the um, White House, and the White House released its its press, and they talked about some important things that about what they wanted to do with um, restoring the honor of America back to its excuse me, restoring the honor of America um, back to its, let's just say, former glory. So in the first part of the White House um, of this part here, where it's on section one of the whitehouse.gov. I'm not going to read the whole thing because there's so much it covers. Um, but I am just going to be covering section one. I'm going to be reading section one for everyone out there to read. So it says here, section one, purpose and policy. Over the past decade, Americans have witnessed a concerted and widespread effort to rewrite our nation's history, replacing objective facts with a distorted narrative driven by ideology rather than truth. This revisionist movement seeks to undermine the remarkable achievements of the United States by casting its founding principles and historical milestones in a negative light. Excuse me. Under this historical revision, our nation's unparalleled legacy of advancing liberty, individual rights, and human happiness is reconstructed as inherently racist, sexist, and oppressive, or otherwise irredeemably flawed. Rather than fostering unity and a deeper understanding of our shared past, the widespread effort to rewrite history deepens societal divides and fosters a sense of national shame, disregarding the progress America has made and the ideals that continue to inspire millions around the globe. The prior administration advanced this corrosive ideology. At Independence National Historical Park in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where our nation declared that all men are created equal, the prior administration sponsored training by an organization that advocates dismantling Western foundations and interrogating institutional racism, and pressured National Historical Park rangers that their racial identity should dictate how they convey history to visiting Americans because America is purportedly racist. Once widely respected as a symbol of American excellence and a global icon of cultural achievement, the Smithsonian Institution in recent years come under the influence of a divisive race-centered ideology. This shift has promoted narratives that portray American and Western values as inherently harmful and oppressive. Um, for example, the Smithsonian American Art Museum today features The Shape of Power, stories of race and American sculpture, an exhibit representing that society's quote unquote the societies, including the United States, have used race to establish and maintain systems of powerful tool in promoting scientific racism, close quote. And promotes the view that race is not a biological reality, but a social construct stating, quote unquote, race is a human invention. The national aspects of, quote unquote, white culture. The forthcoming Smithsonian American Women's History Museum plans on celebrating exploits of male athletes participating in women's sports. These are just a few examples. Well, okay, so so there you have it from section one. I just read it from the White House.gov. Of course, this is official official release from the whitehouse.gov here. So I'm just focusing on the first paragraph. Things here that the White House um, says and believes that basically, to put the long story short, um, the way how American history is structured is based on race relations, and the way American history is shown in a negative light. Negative light. That's just to say, according to what the White House says. Now, there, let's be honest here. There is there was a revisionist history that did happen. Okay, um, and it's been going on for more than a lot longer than what has been said here. Um, but at the same time, the fact that race was really injected, it was really injected into it, and now there's a backlash to the injection that happened. And now what they're doing is they're trying to erase just get rid of the injection that was put into the system. So they're trying to reverse everything that was put into the system, if that makes sense. Um, I just want to just point that out for everybody out there. Um, so so this is something that is happening. So what I'm saying, I'm just talking as a black person that you know we cannot the because of the history of America, and we had slavery in America for 250 years of our nation's history, from the founding of from the time we had the Pilgrims come into America to the time of the American Revolution. Slavery was a very integral part of American history. Okay, and in New York, for example, New York did not abolish slavery until what the 18 middle of like the 1830s. No, not even the 1830s. We abolished slavery right before, I believe it was in the 1800s, the 1810s. Okay, so that this even though New York New York had abolished slavery before the Civil War occurred, um, slavery was still a very integral part of American history up until 1864, 1865. Okay, so there's a lot there that has to be said. Now, some of the interesting facts that the White House is saying, for example, about the that the that American history and American and Western values are harmful and oppressive. There is some truth to that, but at the same time, it does go to an extreme to represent it as harmful, as more than harmful and oppressive. Okay, um, let's just kind of continue here. You guys can kind of understand what I'm saying here. I'm just trying to kind of break it down in a way that people can understand in a way. So, what am I talking about here? Well, let's just kind of go forward. Um, so I'm going to the government. This is the government information here. Of course, I don't want to skip too far ahead, but just to show you, we're going to go into the Park Ranger Service and related programs. This is an article. This is Title 54. I'm getting real technical here, and I'm going into the part where it talks about um, what the Park Service says, the National Park Service says, what they're talking about exactly. So I'm just kind of going down to what they're talking about here. So if you go down to section, so subtitle 1, where it talks about the promotion and regulation, if you go to section, if you go to promotion and regulation here, establishment and general administration, chapter 1001, general provisions, and where it says promotion and regulation, right here, it's going to, in the first paragraph, paragraph A, let's just read what it says here in paragraph A. In general, the Secretary, acting through the Director of National Park Service, shall promote and regulate the use of National Park Service by means and measures that conform to the fundamental purpose of the system units, which purpose is to conserve the scenery, natural and historic objects and wildlife in the system units, and to provide for the enjoyment of the scenery, natural and historic objects and wildlife in such manner and by such means to leave them unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. Okay? Now, I just want to kind of jump forward here. I'm not a lawyer. Okay, I don't know everything here. Okay, I'm not a lawyer, but I am just trying to kind of understand and help everybody understand what is going on here. Okay, now because we're gonna get into this, we're gonna get into this. This is gonna kind of make sense in a second. All right, now I'm just gonna read here what it says here in about what Congress declares about the national park system. Okay. Um, okay. So I'm sorry. I'm just gonna kind of so basically you can read it for yourself. Everybody can read it for themselves about exactly what the promotion and regulation for the national park systems is. Okay. I just want to kind of jump into the where it says Congress declares the national park system, which began the establishment of Yellowstone National Park in 1872, has since grown to include superlative natural, historic, and recreational areas in major regions of the United States and its territories and possessions. These areas, though distinct in character, are united through their interrelated purposes and resources into one national park system as cumulative expressions of a single national heritage. Individually and collectively, these areas derive increased national dignity and recognition of their superb environmental quality through their inclusion jointly with each other in one system, preserved and managed for the benefit and inspiration of all people of the United States. Okay, and okay, I'm just gonna kind of pause it right there. Okay, because I'm going into the next part here. I'm gonna go into the next part in this article right here. Now the oh man, the uh Trump administration. This administration that we have, which is the Trump administration, geez, I hate this when this happens. So the Trump administration, uh, last year, I apologize for that, guys. No, no, this is kind of, I'm just trying to get here, just hear me out, hear me out. The I'm just noticing for myself that the current administration, this administration um, that is in power, this Trump administration is removing the the shall I say black. We have black people that have achieved amazing things, in this country. Black historical figures who've done amazing things. First, we have Henry Johnson that is mentioned here, who is an American war hero, who fought for America in the World War One and achieved amazing. He's a Purple Heart, Medal of Honor, and received France's highest military award from France in World War One. Now we have uh, we have Martin Luther King Jr., whose bust was taken out of the Oval Office and replaced with Winston Churchill. Okay, so this article here was taken from June 17th, 2025, last year. Um, so in the article here, it says a bronze bust of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. placed in the Oval Office by former President Barack Obama has been moved out. The bust of the famed civil rights leaders now sits in President Donald Trump's private dining room, steps away from the Oval Office. A White House official confirmed to USA Today. It's a room where he holds private meetings and lunches with senior staff and as part of various changes he's made to the Oval Office, said the official. The Oval Office now features various flourishes, including gold ornaments around door frames, gold figurines on the fireplace mantel, and a framed copy of the Declaration of Independence behind blue velvet curtains. Um, During Donald Trump's first term in office, the bust of the civil rights leader, just first installed by Obama in 2009, held a prominent place in the Oval Office. Also returning to the Oval Office, a bust of Winston Churchill. Trump brought back the bust of the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom by Sir Jacob Epstein in the Oval Office. Not talking about um, the other Epstein, no relation, um, no relation. I'm talking about the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom by Sir Jacob Epstein in the Oval Office on January 20th, his first day as president. Trump was fulfilling, quote unquote, a promise he made after his election, and when a Churchill bust to the place, it was prominently displayed during his first term, quote unquote, according to America's National Churchill Museum. Obama had moved Churchill's bust to the Treaty Room, located on the second floor of the White House residence during his tenure. In 2009, the year Obama was sworn in as the nation's first African American president, he moved King's bust from the White House library into the Oval Office. The bust was cast by black artist Charles Alston in 1970, 2 years after Dr. King's assassination. Alston received a commission from Reverend Donald Harrington for the Community Church of New York to create a bust of the civil rights leader for $5,000. King's bust, on loan from the Smithsonian, was first brought to the White House Library in 2000 during former President Clinton's second term. Earlier this week, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, known as the NAACP, a civil rights organization, announced that for the first time in 116 years, the sitting President of the United States will not be invited to the NAACP National Convention to be held in July. Um, so, as we can see, uh, Mr. Donald Trump removed the bust uh, of Martin Luther King from the Oval Office and put it the in the in another part of the White House. Okay, and so yes, it was put in the dining room. So it moved from the Oval Office from the dining room, and then Mr. Winston Churchill was put back into the Oval Office. Um, Now, if anyone knows anything about Winston Churchill, of course, he is the man who helped lead the UK out of the World War II. He helped guide the UK through World War II. But at the same time, in case anyone knows, Mr. Winston Churchill was not a good man because, according to if anyone knows anything about him, he was not very good in managing the colony of India at the time that he was guiding the UK the through World War II. He did some bad things in, let's just say, his time as prime minister, as while governing the country of India, was not a very good time. It was a bad time for Indians. You can look this up on Google. All the information is out there. Um, let's just say he was not a very, he didn't say a lot of nice things. Um, but he was, but he of course he guided the UK, or the Empire of Britain, through World War II and helped them survive. Them nearly survived getting overrun by Germany. When they were attacking Britain. Um, there's a lot to say right there. Um, you know, just kind of going forward. Now, what's the connection here with this? The connection is that I'm seeing that, and I'm pretty sure everyone else is noticing that 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 history is kind of being whitewashed, and that's a little concerning. That the government is trying to remove these historical markers of important pieces of history. And if I know anything that is going on, if things are never taught, then sometimes things are meant to repeat. Okay, history will repeat itself because people are not taught about things that happened in the past. And if they're not taught things, then they're not going to know, and they're going to commit the same mistakes again as they did in the past. Now, but this is kind of just something that's concerning here. Um, Now I'm just gonna kind of go forward again here and talk about another topic, but this is a article from the World Socialist website. Okay, now I'm no I'm not exactly a big fan of socialism. Um, but this is an interesting article because it has documented the number of times that that we have instances of this happening again and again. Now, this is from September 19th, 2025. So it says here the Trump administration has compelled national parks, including Harper's Ferry National Historic Park, Manassas National Battlefield Park, Independence National Historical Park, and the President's House site in Philadelphia to remove photographs, signs, and exhibit panels detailing the history of slavery and Native American displacement. These removals, which have come in in recent days, came in response to a March 27th executive order that called for censoring history deemed by the Trump administration to promote corrosive ideology, directing National Park Service to eliminate materials considered to unfairly disparage Americans. Parks and museums nationwide were instructed to review and remove interpretive content on slavery, indigenous dispossession, and related subjects that the administration judged presented the nation's past in a negative light. So I'm just kind of continuing here. Um, I'm gonna read the next paragraph before I talk about this. Staff at Harper's Ferry National Historical Park, where abolitionist John Brown led an unsuccessful attempt at starting a slave revolt in 1859. By the way, that event also is the thing. That's the event that also that's the powder keg that lit the Civil War. Okay, flagged over 30 pieces of material on display that were potentially in violation of Trump's um, of Trump's executive order at Manassas National Battlefield Park in Virginia, where the first and second Battle of Bull Run took place on July 1861 and August 1862, respectively. Staff were ordered by the Trump administration to remove a plaque which criticizes the pseudo-historical lost cause myth propagated by ex-Confederate soldiers at the Sitka National Historical Museum in Alaska and Florida's Castillo de San Marcos National Monument. The Trump administration is investigating displays which mentioned the forced relocation and mistreatment of Native Americans. The most notable example of this sweeping removal is the famous photograph known as the Scourge Back, taking place in 1863 during the Civil War and showing Peter, often sometimes called Gordon, who had escaped in a Louisiana plantation and reached Union lines after harrowing flight about 80 miles. The image taken at a Union military camp by photographers McPherson and Oliver showed Peter's back recently scarred from years of whipping, a visual testament to the violence of slavery. The Scott's back photograph was first published as a wood engraving in Harper's Weekly on July 4, 1863, Independence Day. The same day, news broke out of the Union's victories at Gettysburg and Vicksburg, connecting the struggle for emancipation with national preservation. Abolitionists called for the photograph to be multiplied by the 100,000 and scattered over the states, arguing it could do for public opinion what Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin had achieved in fiction. The photograph helped strengthen support for Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which had been issued January 1st that year. Um, the action to pull this and other images dealing with slavery from display at places like Fort Pulaski and Independence National Historical Park has been met with outrage from historians and museum professionals. Um, Now, I'm gonna have to stop right here. We have we have a suppression, a censorship, a um, I want to say a suppression, a censorship of Black history, but not only Black history, but of indigenous Native peoples' um, history being repressed and censored in the United States. Um, of course, there's because of what happened in Alaska, the United States purchased Alaska, okay, from Russia, and I'm not too sure about what happened in Alaska. I don't know. Maybe somebody can inform me more about that. I would have to go to Alaska myself and find out what the information about that is. But it says here at Sitka National Historical Park in Alaska and Florida's Castillo dan San Marcos National Monument. I definitely would like to learn more about the native indigenous people's population. What happened? What happened? I know that there was forced relocation with like what happened with the Cherokee who were forced from from Georgia to leave Georgia and go to like Oklahoma. I remember that. I also remember about the relocation of the Sioux people, who are native indigenous peoples from South Dakota. They were also forced out of their homeland. And there's also the Nez Perce as well. There's a number of people that I remember learning about back in grade school, but the fact that this administration is going all over the country and trying to really censor any information about about slavery in America and the forced relocation of Native peoples. And first of all, since they're trying to do that, that pretty much proves to me, it pretty much proves to me that okay, they don't want this information out there because they want to show that America is an amazing place to live. And okay, it's like you don't want to. It's like the elephant. It's like an elephant in the room type of situation. Okay, they don't want to really address the elephant in the room. They don't want to talk about the king that wears no clothes. They don't want to talk about that. They just want to avoid it, sweep it under the rug. Don't talk about it. Okay, so and the fact that I'm going to get to the article. There's an article I have about the skirts back here, and this is a very powerful. This picture here is a very powerful representation of what exactly went on with slavery in America, and the fact that we have documented history on this. This there's more than one documented history. I have not even been able to visit the South and to see an actual plantation. I've never actually been to a plantation, but I can tell just by reading up on it, just by looking at pictures of it and watching documentaries on it, that that it was a very different time and a powerful. It's a it's just a different time, a different type of living that just is different from the way we do things today. We live in a different type of world. So the fact that the Trump administration is going out of its way to actually to to not to suppress this information, to suppress and to censor this information is not that's kind of that's wrong. That should not happen. Okay, so I'm kind of going forward here. So I'm just as Columbia University's Dr. Stephanie McCurry stated, these are not just documents; they are witnesses, quote unquote. Bowdoin College's Ann Cross, who studies Civil War photography, notes that images like Peter's altered political perceptions about the need to defeat the Confederacy and to preserve the Union. Historian David Blight remarked, slavery is not an addendum to American history, it is central to it. When we remove the faces of the enslaved from our national story, we risk leaving visitors with a history that is not only incomplete, but dishonest. Close quote unquote. That is very true. That's a very good statement. Um, Continuing, the article says the removals have been condemned by the National Parks Conservation Association, whose director Alan Spears declared, quote unquote, great countries don't hide from their history. The decision to remove this photography from our national parks is as shameful as it is wrong, quote unquote. Former park interpreter James Parker shames the irreplaceable pedagogical importance of the removed photographs. Without them, quote unquote, whole generations are denied the direct visual facts of the past, he says, quote unquote. There could no longer be any doubt that the Trump administration is attempting to stamp out the history of slavery in the United States and to rehabilitate the Confederate States of America, which seceded in 1861 in a bid to preserve chattel slavery in perpetuity. Trump, Trump's moves against the National Park Service slavery photography follow on the heels of an aggressive campaign launched against the Smithsonian Institute, where President Trump has accused the museum of complex promoting anti-American ideology for its honest exhibitions about slavery and American racism. In an executive tweet and subsequent order posted on August 19th, Trump condemned the Smithsonian for emphasizing how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and directed his attorneys to audit the museum's exhibitions and begin purging the content he considered divisive or insufficiently patriotic. The White House has threatened to revoke vital federal funding unless the Smithsonian and other cultural organizations reshape their narratives to quote unquote showcase a more positive portrayal of the nation. An ultimatum that risks layoffs, closures, and the privatization of priceless public collections. Um, quote, now, I'm just going to kind of this article is kind of long. I don't want to read through the whole thing, but let's just read what it says here to close this off. In recent months, Trump has reversed the removal of Confederate symbols from the U.S. military bases, restoring the original names of installations such as Fort Bragg, Fort Hood, and Fort Benning, returning honorifics to Confederate commanders who fought to preserve slavery. Paintings and monuments celebrating the Confederacy, including the reinstallation of Robert E. Lee's portrait at West Bank, have been publicly justified as honoring our history. Since 2021, dozens of states such as Florida, Texas, Arkansas, and Tennessee have enacted laws that limit classroom discussion of slavery, racism, and other forms of exploitation. In Florida, new education standards require students to be taught that enslaved people developed skills such in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit, a provision widely condemned by historians as grossly distorting historical reality. Teachers report facing a minefield of vague and punitive restrictions, with some states establishing hotlines or offering bounties for reporting suspected violations. With the planned celebration of America's semi-quincentennial in 2026, the Trump administration has set its sights on improving infrastructure and displays at Independence National Historical Park in Philadelphia, setting July 4th as deadline for purging materials deemed disparaging. Trump's crusade to whitewash American history mirrors his administration's attacks on art and science. It is a regime that depends for its existence on the construction of a false reality in the past as much as the present. Um, but facts, as the old saying goes, are stubborn things. In the past, as well as the present, the brutality of human bondage as was a truth so powerful as to have been once moved a whole generation into civil war, a social revolution that ended chattel slavery and destroyed the southern oligarchy built on it. This remains a memory etched deeply in the democratic egalitarian consciousness of the American working class, and it is a memory that Trump, the billionaire oligarchy he represents, dreads. Um, that's kind of a great ending to this article here. So I really like how this person actually wrote this article. Landon and Tom McAman, you guys definitely hit the nail on the head with this article. I really like how these guys really put the details into this information to kind of explain how far this administration is going to actually censor Black history and remove, and actually not only Black history, but indigenous Native history as well, which is basically they're trying to cover up and whitewash history and downplay the severity of slavery, the impacts that slavery had in America, which is something that is not what America stands for. We actually fought to get rid of it. They're actually trying to reverse it, and let's just say that they are really trying to reverse it and bring back what happened in the past. And even actually, even after America, even after the Confederacy lost to the Union in America. Did you know that? Does anyone know what happened to the Confederacy after America lost? After the Union, the federal government won against them. What happened was they actually some of them left America. Like some Confederates actually left America. Some Confederates went to go to Brazil, where they could continue slavery in Brazil. In Brazil at the time, Brazil is one of the last countries in South America to abolish slavery. They abolished slavery in 1898. Okay, they had slavery for a long, long time, until 1898, 1899. So there were some Confederates that left the United States that went to Brazil that still practice slavery in Brazil. And in fact, there is a place in Brazil that is where there are descendants of people who are Confederates that that are that still live there. Okay, there is a place in Brazil where they had people that are descendants of Confederates, and they celebrate the Confederate state. Okay, they don't celebrate the history of slavery, but they celebrate let's just say that they celebrate their heritage. Okay, um, so but this is something this is something we don't learn in the United States. We just learned that okay, it was done, but what's going on right now is It's like the Trump administration is downplaying the severity of the past. Okay, so I'm really trying to minimize how bad America looks, but at the same time, it's such an integral part of our history. It really can't be overlooked. You're really trying to deny the impossible here. You can't deny the facts, and there's a lot of facts that happened in this country. Um, so, but people, but there's a saying that says history is written by the victors. So those who are in power and have the money, they want to rewrite and revise history to remake it into their own image, and that is exactly what's happening right here. Okay, history is being rewritten and remade into one's own image. So according to MR Online here, this article is written September 22nd, 2025. So this talks about the historic image of slavery that was removed after the Trump directive here. So the Trump administration has compelled national parks, including Harper's Ferry National Park, Historical Park, Manassas National Battlefield Park, Independent Historical Park, and the President's House site in Philadelphia to remove photograph signs and exhibit panels detailing the history of slavery and Native American displacement, which is shameful. Okay, let me just put this part right here. I just want to kind of just connect here what we have with the Native American displacement part right there. In America, this has always been the case. The government, the federal government, either has treaties with many native indigenous tribes, and over time, every single time they get land, the government gets land from these tribes. They're supposed to abide by the treaties, and they sometimes, most of the time, the federal government does not abide by the treaties to the native indigenous peoples, and it has always broken every single treaty it has done, and so that's why it is concerning to me that the United States wants to buy Greenland from Denmark, but at the same time, Denmark has been in control of Greenland for a lot longer than the United States has been around. Okay, Denmark has Denmark uh, was once was the home of the Vikings. Okay, the Vikings went everywhere around the world. The Vikings went to the Middle East. The Vikings went to Rome. The Vikings went to France. They went everywhere. The Vikings went to Greenland, and they settled in Greenland. They they have been so Greenland has been a colony of Denmark for 800 years, a lot longer than the United States. This country, the United States, has only been around for 250, 300 years. Okay, we are not that old as a nation. As a nation, we've only been around for 200, 300 years. That's not long enough. Okay, Denmark has been around for a lot longer than the United States, and so has Greenland been around for a lot longer than the United States. So these people know their history. They know everything. They know everything that they know about themselves. Okay. The Inuit people are native indigenous peoples, and if the United States was to get control of Greenland, I can pretty much see the same thing happening to what happened to the native indigenous peoples in America and in Hawaii. It's the same thing that will happen to Greenland. Um, so it's just not a very positive thing. So let's just continue here. It says the removals, which have been come to light in recent days, came in response to the March 27th executive order that called for censoring history deemed by the Trump administration to promote corrosive ideologies. Okay, they're talking about divisive ideology. Um, So, directing the Park Service to eliminate materials considered to unfairly disparage Americans. Parks and museums nationwide were instructed to review and remove interpretive content on slavery, indigenous dispossession, and related subjects that the administration judged presented the nation's past in a negative light. Um, Now, I'm going to kind of skip down because there's a lot that's said here in this article. It's kind of repeating itself. That I want to kind of get to the skirt's back photograph. So I'm going to go talk to the paragraph here where it says, here, the skirt's back photograph was first published as a wood engraving at Harper's Weekly on February 4th. Um, July 4th, 1863, Independence Day. The same day, news broke out of the Union's victories at Gettysburg and Vicksburg, which are important battles in the Civil War, um, connecting the struggle for emancipation with national preservation. Abolitionists called for the photograph to be multiplied by the 100,000 or scattered over the states in fiction. The photograph helped strengthen support for Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which had been issued January 1st that year. The action to pull this and other images detailing slavery from display at places like Fort Pulaski and Independence National Park has been met with outrage from historians and museum professionals. Um, um, so I'm kind of here. I'm going to skip ahead. Okay. Um, yeah. I'm gonna have to skip. I'm just gonna have to stop right there. But we can see here from the September 22nd article that it is again repeating the same thing that was mentioned in the historic article here from the World Socialist website. Okay, this same thing was repeated again on September 20, 22nd, 2025. Now, I want to get to the next part here where it's talking about the slavery displays removed from the Philadelphia historical site. Um, Now, I'm kind of curious about this because it's talking about the president's house in Philadelphia. So it says here on January 23rd, 2026, a series of informational signs about slavery was removed on September Thursday, um, from the President's House in Old City, Philadelphia, a historic site operated by the National Park Service. Before the President's exhibit at the 6th and Market Streets was the home of Presidents George Washington and John Adams, opened in 2010. Local activists urged the creators to include information about the enslaved people who lived at the home. Those stories made it into the final exhibit. The city filed a lawsuit in federal court Thursday seeking to have the signs put back. The suit says that the city has prior agreements with NPS that require any disputes to be resolved in an informal fashion through communication and consultation or other forms of non-binding alternative dispute resolution that are mutually acceptable to the parties. In this case, the National Park Service and the Interior Department did not engage with the city and do not have the approval to make unilateral changes to the President's House exhibit, the lawsuit says. Quote unquote. Mayor Sherelle Parker and the city's agreement with the federal government dates back to 2006 and requires parties to meet and confer if there are to be any changes made to an exhibit. Um, Parker says, the mayor Sherelle Parker says, quote unquote, our city solicitor Renee Garcia is working in conjunction with the amazing members of our law department team in working on, following up on that cooperative agreement, and we will keep you posted as to the result of our actions. Paul Stenke, executive director of the Preservation Alliance for Greater Philadelphia, told CBS Philadelphia that workers from the Park Service will remove the signage. Um, Stenke said, the decision to do this appears to be made because the president's house site memorialized the 9 enslaved individuals that were held there against the war by President Washington and his wife Martha, and this is the only federal historical site that commemorates the history of slavery in America. A spokesperson with the Interior Design said in a statement Friday that the displays were removed as the department implements President Trump's executive order restoring truth and sanity to American history. Um, it says here all federal agencies are to review interpretive materials to ensure accuracy, honesty, and alignment with shared national values. Following the completion of the required review, the National Park Service is now taking appropriate action in accordance with the order, as the spokesperson said in a statement. We encourage the city of Philadelphia to focus on getting their jobless rates down and ending their reckless cashless bail policy instead of filing ferocious, frivolous lawsuits in the hopes of demeaning our brave founding fathers who set the brilliant roadmap for the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. In February, Mr. Trump signed an executive order aimed at removing ideological indoctrination or divisive narratives. The order specifically mentioned Philadelphia's um, Independence National Historic Park, home of the Liberty Bell of the President's House, as well as the Smithsonian Institution museums. In Washington, D.C. At the time, dozens of Philadelphia organizations signed a letter to Interior Secretary Doug Burgum opposing the changes. Um, Burgum was given a deadline on January 4th, 2026 to complete any changes to Independence National Historical Park, a date when the site will take center stage as the country celebrates its 250th anniversary. I'm just going to kind of skip here. So, Philadelphia leaders react to removal of exhibits from the president's house. Um, so, the Stenke said the exhibit was created after years of scholarship and research to make sure we got the story right. Today, in a matter of minutes, it was all ripped down and presumably put away in storage for who knows how long. It's a terrible day for American history. It's a terrible day for Independence National Historic Park. And it's a terrible day for our city. Since Stenke said he believes the stories will reemerge in other places in Philadelphia in the days and weeks to come. Um, Now, I'm just reading up on this information here. There's a lot that's going on in Philadelphia. Um, so there's a lot that's going on in the reaction here. People are reacting to the news. It's not being received very positively, and I forgot that this year is the 250th anniversary of the United States of America's founding, because the United States was founded in the United States was founded in 1776. We're already in 2026, so I'd say it's about 250 years that this country is 250 years old. So this the fact these slavery displays are being removed by the direction of President Trump kind of is significant because um, that they don't want everybody to know about the history. Um, of course, back in the day, George Washington had slaves because even though he was president, he still had slaves. And during that time, of course, uh, black, no, black people in America were not allowed to vote. They were not basically citizens in the United States. So, President Washington, George Washington had slaves, as well as Thomas Jefferson himself also had slaves. Um, so this is not, you know. This is not old news. Everybody knows this. We all know this, of course. So I'm just kind of skipping ahead again. Um, in this article here, everybody can read up for themselves on CBS News. Of course, this is from January 23rd, so it was just not too long ago, about 4 days ago, this article was written, just recently. So there is a lot that is to be said here. Um, there's a lot of pushback as well. While we have the while we have a lot of things going on in the U.S., uh, this is also something that is worth paying attention to. I don't think it's a good thing that this administration, excuse me, I don't think it's a good thing that it's not a good thing that this administration wants to whitewash history just to make it make make it seem like everything is fine and dandy, when in fact not everything. It was not fine and dandy for everyone who was an American at the time, because not everybody had the same rights as everybody else. In the past, not everybody had the same rights as everybody else does today. In fact, today we have more rights. We have this. We have amazing rights, and there's so much a person can do um, for themselves as a single person. There's so much to achieve, and of course, as there's just endless possibilities. So there's a lot to be said here. Um, so I just wanted to leave everyone with this news. Um, just keep your head up, keep your head high, um, stay positive. Of course, if one wants to learn more about this information, um, a person can definitely check the local library for for more information on the history of what we're talking about here. So I just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention, that basically American history is being whitewashed, and not everybody's story is being told. Um, America was not built only for one particular group of individuals. It was created uh, for the benefit of all people. So that's something that we all have to keep in mind. You know, so I definitely want to keep this topic coming. It's a little bit different from what I'm normally doing because I'm talking a lot about sports, but I definitely wanted to share this information with everyone out there just to keep a watchful eye on things. So don't be afraid to do that. I've definitely included all the links to the discussion today in the description box below. So hope everybody enjoys their wonderful day, and stay warm and toasty. So thank you for listening, and I will talk to you later in the next